Welcome to a Milk Market Tidbit for the November Dairy Products Report that the USDA released yesterday. This is Dr. Lawrence Jones from Farm Institute, and I'm recording this on Tuesday, January the 7th of 2025. So the Dairy Products Report is our third report. The first one is always milk production, followed by cold storage. And really what we're trying to sort through with these reports is, what's going on with demand and supply. This is how the entire month of November came up. To orient you, we've got the October numbers and then the final, because a lot of times there's revisions. And if the final is in green, that means they were revised up, or red, obviously revised down. So for the dairy products report, probably the biggest issue is that the production of cheese came in a little bit lighter than we thought it would by about 30 million pounds. Now, one of the things that I always remind myself is if the production is lower than we think it is, and that means that demand is probably worse than we thought it was, because we use the estimated production to guesstimate our removal from cold storage, and actually we removed less than we thought we would, so it probably all came out in demand. Now, butter was a little bit different. It was actually higher than was projected. We get our rolling disappearance and production numbers, and to me this is the graph that tells us the most about a month. So first off, we can see that the disappearance has been higher than the production here for almost a year, and we knew that we've been pulling cheese out of cold storage, from 1.5 billion down to 1.3 and change. So right now, if we look at the rolling disappearance, again, that's for the last year, was 39,243 pounds a day, and our November production was 38,392. So in fact, our production was a little bit lower than our rolling demand. We've got about 33.8 days of excess cheese in cold storage. That's been as high as 38 and a half back here at the end of 2021, so we brought that down quite a bit. And from this, we can estimate we need about 9.4 million cows to meet this demand. Now, we just had a global dairy trade actually today, and it was down 1.4%. So we've had two session over sessions that have been down. That was basically all whole milk powder and skim milk powder, because cheddar and butter were actually up just a little bit. We can look at how it actually changed. For example, butter went up 8 cents, and then we can compare that to our spot market, which butter at 2.58. We should be exporting some butter because we've got 45 cents of difference there between the global and the spot. Cheddar came up just a couple cents, and our spot market was $1.92. That's a little tight for exporting, but you'll see we actually did export a fair amount here. Non-fat dry milk is living its own little world. It's up to $1.37 with the world market only $1.30. Overall, this would have brought our 50-50 blend price up about 14 cents with the biggest increase in class 3. Before we actually look at the exports, these are the cheese prices. Green is global dairy trade, so that was at 2.15. Red is the spot market. It's $1.92, and then the last December cheese price was $1.76. And what this graph does is it kind of tells us when we should be exporting. So whenever there's black dots here, it says that the National Dairy Sales Report is down low enough that we should be exporting. So in fact, we should have had continued to have some exports here. And in fact, we did. So if we look at the November production at 1.15 billion pounds of cheese, we actually exported 7.7% of that. That was actually up from last month, which was 7.2. And that's about 9 million pounds of more cheese than we had been, because overall we were about 6.9%. Butter is running right at that 3.2%, and it usually runs right around that 3% number. So we'll look at a few of these graphs. This is the daily cheese production. We were on a huge uptrend, and we'll extend that out. And you could actually argue that we continued that into 2023, but man, look at 2024. We're way off of the daily cheese production, as we kind of knew in that overall report. And if we look at the cheese to milk ratio, this is kind of interesting because we've been on this long-term trend, and that, in fact, we were not too far off of it. I was looking at it saying, well, we put less milk into cheese than I thought we would, but in fact on the long-term trend we're pretty close to where we should be. We've had a long-term trend down of Italian type cheeses, and in fact it popped up a little bit this month. We've had an uptrend of American that includes cheddar, and it's been down for about 6 months here off of that trend line. And cheddar itself is also way off of that trend line. The other cheeses were basically right on an uptrending line there. If we look at American type cheeses, kind of the same sort of thing, significant uptrend. 2022 continued that probably, but we broke it there, and 2024 is way off of it, and we thought it would come in a bit higher, but in fact it came in a bit lower. Cheddar followed exactly the same pattern you would expect, that because cheddar makes up a major portion of American, and this is way off of where we've been on that long-term trend. There are several explanations for this. I'm not quite sure which one to believe, and each actually StoneX kind of put their explanations together with a big question mark. You know, are cheese plants just expecting more capacity to come online, so they've really stopped producing as much cheddar? Is demand actually fallen off significantly that we've stopped producing cheddar? Lots of different questions. Sometimes I throw this in, which is, you know, how our National Dairy Sales Report cheese prices relate to the spot prices. Our last one was $1.76 here in December, and you can see the spot was coming up at that point. But basically, we've been running, you know, as high as 228 here back in October, and then we've dropped off a little bit at this point. Whey production is actually down quite a bit, and we extend that long-term trend. 2022 is probably on that trend line, but 2024 is way off of that. And I've not heard a good explanation as why we're producing less whey than what we historically would produce. You know, again, we're producing a little bit less cheese, so that's probably the answer. When I look at butter, I like to look at how much fat actually goes into butter versus the other components. And in fact, we've been on this long-term trend down. We popped up in 2022, and then we continued that trend down. And we were pretty close to expected here, maybe just a little bit lower than seasonally expected. And part of all of this is the fat percentages, because we've been just on this, again, huge uptrend. And then we really broke that in the fall of 2022, and the latest fat percentage we got in the agricultural prices was 4.39. That's just like an all-time high. Butter production's been on an uptrend here, and to extend that, we've actually pretty close come back to that. 2023 was pretty well on that line. In 2024, I think we're going to actually end up back on that long-term trend there. Very seasonal. You know, we make the majority of the butter in the spring of the year, and then really fall off in the fall of the year. When we look at the pounds of butter to pounds of non-fat dry milk, this kind of gives us an idea if that ratio is staying the same. And that was about 1.1 for quite a few years, from 2016 up to 2022, and that butter has really taken off, so we're making more butter now than non-fat dry milk, which means that we're getting cream from other sources instead of a skim plant. And you can see how that trend would suggest that we were way off of that in 2024. What's interesting here is the value between butter and non-fat dry milk. You know, starting in August of 22, butter became more valuable, but here in November, non-fat dry milk is more valuable, and part of that is the fact that non-fat dry milk is up to, you know, $1.39 versus $1.30 on the world market. Turn to the other products at this point. This is ice cream. We're basically on that long-term trend. It looks like it's kind of broke and trending down, but actually we're pretty close to where we would have ended up here. Now yogurt is starting to take off. We've got, you know, the long-term trend 2022 is still on it, but we're getting more yogurt production as we get into a little bit healthier diets, and people are starting to look at yogurt. Now, I thought yogurt was actually going to fade away here because of the sugar content, but we've now got some yogurts that are lower sugar and more favorable to the current millennial diet here. But look at this one. This is cottage cheese. 2022, this just took off. We can thank TikTok for this. It's just really exploded here. So we got the dairy products report on Monday. Today we got the global dairy trade and export data. Tomorrow we're going to get the national dairy sales report, which will be the first one for January. Now Thursday is going to be a shortened day with a day of mourning, and we're going to start getting the statistical uniform prices. They're due out after the 12th or so, so it'll be Monday, Tuesday of next week, and that'll be the next milk market tidbit for the federal milk marketing data.